So there was some controversy afoot in MLS. That's not new. MLS normally has some sort of weird controversy swirling around, but it was one that struck actually kind of strangely close to home. Right, as somebody that was never an avid follower of MLS, I've obviously gotten more into it, over the past couple of years. But I didn't have a club growing up or anything. I've really been introduced to the inner workings of MLS through the podcast I do with a guy named Julian Gressel. Julian plays for Inter Miami. He is the guy that started the most matches for Inter Miami, I believe, this entire season. He, is in the same starting lineup as Lionel Messi. They're freaking pictures of Julian giving team talks to, in Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez and Jordi Alba and Sergio Busquets are listening to him. He's somebody that's very involved, and he has multiple MLS Cups, and they obviously just won the Supporters Shield. I shouldn't say obviously, because that might be a bit mysterious to you, but they won the Supporters Shield, which is the best regular season team in MLS. And that means they're going to be the number one seed going into the playoffs. And then we're America. We love playoffs. The playoffs will play out, and we'll see who wins MLS Cup this year. But after the Supporters Shield was clinched, it came out in an exclusive report from this guy named Ben Jacobs that Inter Miami are set to qualify for the Club World Cup with confirmation expected this month. This sparked a very quick reaction, which I'm going to explain, and then I'm going to explain kind of what actually happened, because you might be wondering what the drama is here. Well, that's summed up in this tweet. Right, this person that tweeted out, when a league allows a team to ignore roster rules, use sponsors to bring in players, not announce the qualification process until after said team has done something notable, or give the spot to said team while ignoring years of results, your league might be corrupt. They were not the only Twitter account or not only response on Reddit or in the news talking about how it's a little ridiculous that Inter Miami is going to basically be handed a spot at the new Club World Cup. Right, if you don't know what the Club World Cup is, they've expanded it dramatically. It used to be something you could breeze through. Well, now it's 32 teams. And FIFA lays out who's going to be participating in this Club World Cup. There's basically three ways for you to qualify, okay? One is you win the continental championship for your continent, whether it be Africa, Oceania, Asia, UEFA. If you have won your continental championship over that stretch of time, right, because the Club World Cup's now going to happen every 4 years. If you win your continental championship over the stretch of time in those 4 years, then you get to go. But then if you have teams like Al Ahly that win it 3 times or Real Madrid that win it twice, right, then that just adds extra teams to the second qualification pot, which is via ranking. Right, so there's a certain number of teams that qualify based off of their coefficient ranking in their continent. So Bayern, PSG, Inter, Porto, Benfica, Dortmund, Juventus, Atletico Madrid, and stunningly, FC Salzburg from Austria, who've managed to sneak in at the last spot there. That would be thanks to, I believe they're the team in the last spot, but whoever is the team in the last spot is thanks to Real Madrid winning multiple trophies, obviously. Then you have a couple of African teams, ES Tunis and Mamelodi Sundowns, AFC, OFC, 2 CONMEBOL teams, River Plate and Boca Juniors, that both get to go, all because of their coefficient ranking, right? That thing that is the ability to achieve and win things on a continental level distilled down to one number. I guess not win things because, you didn't win the top trophy, but maybe they won another one. I don't know, right? I really don't know what goes into the coefficient number, but that's the second way to qualify. But there's actually one more way to qualify. And you have to go down to the available slots section to understand what that one more way to qualify is, right? There are the slots allotted to each association, which means there are 4 slots in Africa. If you have one team like Al Ahly that wins it 3 times, then 2 ranking pathway teams go through, right? 12 from UEFA, 1 from OFC, right? CONMEBOL, you have your allotment of teams that are gonna be sent through, and then there's this one team from the host country. And guess who's hosting the Club World Cup as a precursor to the actual World Cup a year later? That would be the United States. And now there is literally nothing, or had been literally nothing, indicating how that host country team would be selected. Now, this is not a new practice, okay? The first time I became aware of this was in the Club World Cup, was when it was in Japan, and there was just a second Japanese club in the Club World Cup all of a sudden. I think it was like the Urawa Reds at the time. And you basically just got to decide a way to select another team from the host country, another representative from the host country, as a way to guarantee there would be a representative from the host country in the tournament. Fortunately, Seattle Sounders won the CONCACAF Champions Cup, so they are going to, there's going to be one MLS team in already on merit, but the host country would then be able to select a second team. Now, what is the best way to select that second team? It's not been publicly stated. But to be perfectly honest, would anybody blame the U.S. Federation from selecting Inter Miami as the representative for the host country, right? And again, I have vested interest in this. I am friends with a guy that plays for Inter Miami, which is still a sentence that I find very hard to believe, and we make a podcast together, right? Player Manager, I forgot to say the name of it before because I know I always forget to link it under these videos. But Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets, one of the most popular single jerseys in the entire world, and the opportunity to broadcast that sort of team as a representative for the host country. Why would you not take that? No offense to a Columbus Crew who made the Champions Cup final and are the second best team in the Eastern Conference behind Inter Miami at the moment and the reigning MLS Cup champions. But Inter Miami would be a better public-facing team if you are just looking at it from a marketing standpoint. Then you can imagine the relief when the people in charge of this decision were handed a freebie, because Inter Miami won the Supporters Shield. They ended up winning the regular season trophy, right, for being the best team in the regular season in the U.S. Now, that is basically, it seems, according to this article, which I've given a brief glance at from Ben Jacobs here, that would seem to be the excuse that they've decided to use to be able to include Inter Miami in this tournament. And keep in mind, that also means Inter Miami is just a very good team, because even without Luis Suarez and without Lionel Messi and a bunch of other guys on international duty for Copa America, and a few for Euros, whatever, right? They were able to keep winning. MLS does not stop for that international break. And then Messi comes back with a sprained ankle. Messi's only played 17 matches in MLS this season, and the team still won the Supporters Shield. So it's a very good team. You can't take that away from them, obviously. But this has provided an excuse to a decision that they were probably going to try and ram through anyways, which is that the host country representative was going to be Inter Miami. Now, the only other possible way I could think of deciding the host country representative is the MLS Cup winner. But of course, the playoffs are a little bit more of a crapshoot than the Supporters Shield, and so that is why I would imagine they're pushing this through. But that's what Ben Jacobs is laying out here, right? He says they're set to qualify for the Club World Cup after beating Columbus Crew to win MLS Supporters Shield for the first time. Inter Miami are likely to be confirmed as the host representative in Miami's Hard Rock Stadium. It could host the opening game. MLS Cup doesn't conclude until December 7th, leaving a lack of clarity with the draw potentially taking place earlier than that date. That gives you your second excellent excuse. I say an excuse, but one person's excuse is another person's reason, right? That MLS Cup isn't going to end until after the draw has already taken place. Now, it is just one team, so technically you just have the draw take place and have the host nation just be host nation and then wait for MLS Cup's winner to come through, which, by the way, Inter Miami is favored for, but that's not obviously the question at hand here. The question at hand here is trying to come up with a fair system of selecting the host nation team, which doesn't exist right now. That you would want to have the team selected before the draw, in which case the Supporters Shield is the best way to determine who that team should be. Now, I will add a caveat here that I do think it devalues the tournament a little bit, in the same way that Qatar making its first ever World Cup by hosting it devalues the tournament a little bit. I think when you have something called a World Cup, there needs to be a qualifying mechanism for it. It needs to be laid out. I think if you just say the most recent league winner or the most recent National Cup winner gets to represent the host nation, that would simplify a lot of this. But it doesn't say that anywhere, right? And if you want people to take this new hodgepodge weird cup thing that FIFA's decided to just create, right, the Club World Cup, they've decided to Frankenstein something together to compete with the actual World Cup and to compete with to compete with things like UEFA's Champions League, which FIFA doesn't directly benefit from. So they want to create the ultimate club, competition, and that's why they've gone for the Club World Cup here. if you want it to be taken seriously as an actually competitive event, like, as a legit competition, then you need to have a legit qualifying process. Without that, I don't blame anybody for wanting Inter Miami to be there, and you can at least come up with the excuse that they've earned it up to this point. But if you want this competition to be legit going forward, the host nation having their national team get in is one thing when it comes to the actual World Cup, right? Because there's only one team, right? It's not like we're going to wheel out the U23s or the national team from next door, like Saudi Arabia is guaranteed to qualify in the Qatar World Cup. Like that's not happening. Right? Well, when you're hosting a Club World Cup, there's a lot of freaking clubs. Even in the United States that you could choose from, there needs to be a way, a national cup or the National League, whichever the federation chooses. Hell, maybe you leave it up to them, but some sort of competitive way for that team to be chosen, or else you're just going to end up with debates like this, and it turns into an 8th grade popularity contest trying to elect the class president when the nerd on the council ends up doing all the work. I'm not saying that was me. I'm just saying that was me. Shush.